been a long season of racing for the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge, and it all comes to a close here at Donington Park. The final race of the season is very, very close to starting because the green flag lap is already underway here on a dry circuit with the occasional damp patch, but to all intents and purposes, a dry Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. And it's Will Aspin that leads the field around on the warm-up lap with the pole position. Mikey Doble alongside him for Zentek Motorsport, then Aidan Hills, who got his first podium in the championship earlier on today, and Sam Smith, who was very impressive on his debut across both of the first two races of the weekend. Will Orton and Harley Horton make up the third row of the grid. On row number 4, it's Haytham Caragiuli and Will Rochford. Rounding out the top 10 then on row 5, we have Owen Hizzy and John Bennett, who was in the wars a little bit in the earlier race. Then it's Will Vincent and Rory McKean, who was in the wars here at Donington a few months ago. Ignacio Zanon and Nat Hodgkiss make up the 7th row of this big grid, with Conor Grady out of position, you'd have to say, down there in 15th alongside Oliver Richardson. Then it's Josh Steed, very much out of position. He is the champion this year, remember, but had an off on the opening lap earlier on today. He's got Magnus Krickleby for company. Krickleby has had a real weekend to forget. Then in the GT5 AM category, Chris White alongside Harry Mangian. They are the top 2 on the grid, ahead of Paolo Santi and Mark Steele. And then Phil McGarty with Karim Sekat right alongside him. Then it's Sam Callahan for Brakel Racing on his first weekend in the championship. Sean Peters for company, his teammate actually there towards the back of the GT5 grid, with Balsidou right at the back. Then we move into the G40 Cup then. G40 Cup is headed by Thomas Holland ahead of Mark Warren. In the pro category, that is. Bren Maud and Nick White are next in line on row number 2. Row number 3 is Brendan Hafner and Rupert Laslett, the top 2 G40 AM drivers on the grid. And then moving towards the rear of the field then, we have got Andrew Willis and Peter Dilnott, who both had offs in the previous race, Dilnott retiring up at Redgate Corner, with Stephen Davis, also a retirement in the previous race, bringing up the rear. So that is the grid. The race is going to be an interesting one, this actually, because we've got still a couple of championships that are not quite settled, in particular the G40 Pro class. Mark Warren and Thomas Holland. It would take a bit of a disaster for Mark Warren. He's had a win and a second place in class already this weekend, but Thomas Holland did manage to win that second race, which was just enough to keep the championship alive, and in fact moved him ahead of Nick White for second place in the points as well. So really good race that from Tom Holland. We'll see whether or not he's going to be able to get a second race victory here and maybe snatch that championship away. The G40 Cup cars that are lining up at the back of the grid, they will set off 10 seconds after the GT5 Challenge field, which makes up well over 2/3 of the grid. And that is where we're expecting some really, really exciting racing then, with Will Aspin on pole position, Mikey Doble alongside him. Aidan Hills there in the slightly patched up blue car is third alongside Mazda MX-5 graduate, fellow Mazda MX-5 graduate Sam Smith. Lights out then, we're away and racing for the final time at Donington Park. Very even start from both the front row men. Someone coming up the inside, that's Will Orton, I think, the white car that was on the grass, because Sam Smith was slow away and tried to come over to block him. Wheel to wheel though between the top 2 into turn number 1. Aspin gets into Redgate ahead, but the quicker exit, it belongs to Mikey Doble, who's rubbing up the inside. There's a bit of contact there and Doble ends up over the grass. I definitely think he was squeezed then, wasn't he? He will certainly say he was. That was a bit unfortunate. Aidan Hills then steams through into second, and Sam Smith, who had a terrible start, up into third. We've got a car off, that's Peter Dilnott at Redgate. I think that's where he went off in the previous race. Hopefully he doesn't get beached on this occasion. Side by side for the lead though, and that's Aidan Hills on the inside. 3 wide as they go through Starkeys and Schwantz curve. I don't know what that was all about, but Sam Smith has managed to pick the pocket of both Aidan Hills and Will Aspin ahead of him, and Smith gets the lead. Well, Aidan Hills, I know he's a former rallycross star, but that was a little bit of unnecessary rallycrossing, really. There was a gap on the inside. He didn't have to take to the grass, but anyway, at least they avoided contact, and Sam Smith is thanking them very much because he's got the lead. Aspin, though, is coming back at him wheel to wheel for the race lead underneath the ghost of the Dunlop Bridge down towards the chicane, and it is going to be Aspin that goes back ahead. Now that inside line is damp. There's someone on the damp stuff there. That is Will Orton. Locks up, bit of a block pass on Mikey Doble, who's getting well and truly roughed up on this opening lap, and he now falls into the clutches of the next group of cars behind him, with the likes of Harley Horton and Haytham Caragiuli. 4 wide into the hairpin. That is never going to work in a month of Sundays. There's going to be contact here, surely. poor old Mikey Doble, of course, is the one that gets the hip and shoulder. He's out way, way wide. And Mikey Doble, who started on the front row, is well outside the top 10 now by the end of the first lap of racing. And I'm not really convinced that he did anything wrong in all of that. The red mist will fully be descending inside that number 88 car now. Through the hairpin they go, out onto the start-finish line. It's got a real end-of-term feel to this, hasn't it? This is the last race of the season. They don't need to worry about repairing the cars in time for another race or another race weekend. And they really are getting stuck in here, aren't they? Through red gate they go. There is the champion, the black and orange number 55 of Josh Steed, who was off in the early race, had a spin when he was towards the front of the field, down at the old hairpin. So this was the replay of the first squeeze. That was Aspin putting Doble on the grass. Aidan Hills gets the run down the hill. Oh, that's John Bennett going off. Didn't spot that first time round. Does he make the wall? Yes, he does, I'm afraid. And so John Bennett out of the race. This is what happened to Peter Dillnott. He goes in way too quickly. There's a car in front that he has to try and avoid, and he exits stage left. He did not continue either. I can see out of the window that car being recovered by the live snatch vehicle. And then this happened. Right, so Aspin had a moment. Aidan gets alongside. Yeah, Will doesn't like being overtaken, does he? He gave another squeeze there to Aidan Hills. I take back what I said then. I thought Aidan had gone on the grass unnecessarily, but actually Aspin was trying to close the door when Aidan was already coming through. So anyway, that briefly allowed Sam Smith into the lead, and then Aspin got him back again down the back straight. But I'd be careful, Sam, when you try and pull up to overtake Will, because he's not going to go down without a fight here, is he? Defends the inside line into the hairpin. The passenger side wing mirror has been folded back there on Aspin's car, so he won't be able to see anything out of that. That one defensive move, look, backs up the whole field, doesn't it? Aidan Hills suddenly arrives back on the tail of Sam Smith and brings with him Will Rochford and Will Orton, who was the man that locked up going into the chicane on the opening lap. Mikey Doble, by the way, 13 places lost there, given the fact he was challenging for the lead out of turn one, finishing the first lap all the way down in 15th place is not what he would have been hoping for. That was a spin and surely contact. Oh dear, nearly into the end of the pit wall. That was number 48 going around, coming out of the last turn, and that is Ignacio Zanon then, who will fall right to the back of the GT5 field. Lucky not to get collected by anybody, actually. That was a pretty scary moment. A big lead gap now, look, for Will Aspin. He generated that all in the final corner, really, because a couple of corners ago he was defending from Sam Smith, and now he's nearly 7/10 to the good. Will Orton sets the new fastest lap of the race. Here comes Mikey Doble, just ahead of the yellow car of Conor Grady. And looking back for our GT5 AM runners, it's number 22 leading the class. This is the spin then for Zanon. There he goes, he's already wide, so is Conor Grady ahead of him. The grass is still very wet, around he goes, and I'm not quite sure who that was. Was that Magnus Kruklevi maybe, just behind him? No, it wasn't. I think it was actually Steele in the leading GT5 AM car. He did a really, really good job to avoid him. Off goes Owen Hizzy. No, sorry, not Owen Hizzy. That is Vincent from 9th position. The number 70 car runs wide up through McLean's, and William Vincent loses the rear trim, loses a lot of places as well. Just under pressure there, ran a bit too wide through Coppice. Very easy to do. 10-second penalty already being given out here to car number 15. That's Stephen Davis, who's had a bit of a weekend to forget. As there, Aidan Hills is defending third place from Will Rochford, who steams up the inside, but then can't stop the car. He runs wide, and Aidan Hills repays the favour, gets him back on the exit of the corner. Will Orton goes through with him as well. So Hills back to third, and up into fourth position comes Will Orton. Rochford then down to fifth, with Haytham Caragiuli, the orange car, closing in behind the TCR machine. Now Josh Steed as well, having a bit of an under-the-radar weekend here is Josh, but he's into 9th place now. His next target being the Hodgkiss car. Qualified well for the first race yesterday, but a lap one spin after contact with Mikey Doble, unfortunately, saw him drop down the field. So through another yellow flag zone at Hollywood. That will be because of the John Bennett car being recovered just out of shot on the left-hand side. But now they're back into a green flag area for the old hairpin. And there you can see the live snatch vehicle, having moved the car to a slightly safer position. It returns to its position. Aidan Hills is off, though, going through Starkeys, and rejoins behind Caragiuli, but actually Harley Horton's going to go through. There are more cars coming. Josh Steed tried to pull out from behind that Hodgkiss and didn't realise the slow Hills was there. And so Hodgkiss, Steed and Magnus Kruklevi all go through. That will mean that Aidan Hills has dropped down into 10th place then. Didn't see how he got there, but we'll be able to take a look at that now, I believe. Was it assisted? No, just a bit too much speed through the old hairpin. And once you touch that grass, it is like ice. It's still soaking wet after all the rain. He avoids the Pirelli board, though. That was thoughtful of him. And then rejoins the circuit. And, yeah, his second close call on that part of the track in 3.5 laps. Lead gap, by the way, came down fractionally on the last lap. It's really come down this time, though. Sam Smith right back on the tail of Will Aspin. He was a 10th faster on the previous lap with Smith to set the new fastest lap of the race at 45.916. And you can see they've really cleared off now. Josh Steed there, 3 wide briefly with Hodgkiss and Crickleby. I think Crickleby might get past both of them there. He certainly got past Hodgkiss. Aiden Hills is trying to come through with them as well. On the inside is Hodgkiss in the blue car. He's late on the brakes, though. Steed gets to the front of the group. Then it will be Crickleby. And then Aiden Hills on the outside line can't quite draw alongside Hodgkiss as they come across the line. Typical Ginetta GT5 challenge racing. This is always exciting, especially here at Donington. The wet race earlier on was entertaining, but this is more typical of what we see. These cars really are good for slipstreaming around these high average speed racetracks, places like Donington and Silverstone. We've always seen good racing around these kind of tracks for the GT5 challenge drivers. New fastest lap now set by Will Orton in third, 145.749. So he was a couple of tenths quicker than Sam Smith there. Gets the gap down to 1.7 seconds. There's Mikey Doble. As into the pit lane comes, that's Sanon, isn't it? I think, who spun at that part of the circuit a couple of laps ago. Right then, G40s, what's going on here? We've got the G40 Pro category being led by Mark Warren. 57 is Nick White. He is second in that class. And they are 26th and 27th places overall. There is Warren, the class leader. And so Mark Warren, who coming into this race was ahead of Thomas Holland in the points. Holland is only third in class, actually, in the number 23 car. Here he comes, just ahead of Andrew Willis, actually, there in 37. So that's the man that was trying to beat Mark Warren, and he's not going to be able to do it at the moment, although Warren was leading the earlier race and then went off and dropped back down to third place, so that could still all change. This is all changing as well. Josh Steed has caught up to Harley Horton and Haytham Caragiuli, who themselves have swapped places, with the Elite Motorsport driver moving ahead of the TCR driver. And Josh Steed says, this looks fun, I want to play as well. A bit of paint traded as they go on the hill, a bit of bodywork goes flying from one of the cars on the road. Steed locks up, gets into the back of Harley Horton, and through it all goes Haytham Caragiuli, who reclaims both of the places. Lots going on there, all in a very short space of time. Not over yet either, because Horton's trying to muscle his way back through on the inside, but Caragiuli will cross the line in 5th position. This is 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th places, and this has got trouble written all over it, hasn't it? Because they're getting closer and closer and closer together and getting more and more irate with each other, it seems. So Caragiuli 5th, 6th Horton, 7th Steed, 8th Crickleby, 9th Hodgkiss, 10th for Aiden Hills, who, a bit like Mikey Doble, has been roughed up a bit in this race, hasn't he, really? Although lost most of his places with that mistake at the old hairpin. There's a mistake there, was there, for Caragiuli? He's wide, they're all holding each other up. Josh Steed gets the run, pulls to the inside line, to the outside goes Crickleby, 3 wide for 6th place. Crickleby's on the grass, Steed's into the side of Harley Horton as they turn into McLean's corner. Horton's got the inside, though. Steed on the dirty side of the road, can't keep the momentum up. Now he's got to turn from attack to defence to try and keep Crickleby and Hodgkiss at bay. All the while, Aiden Hills desperately trying to recover that lost ground, but he's just struggling to break into this battle, isn't he, the blue and orange car? So somehow they actually came out of that little exchange all in the same order. Don't ask me how, with Caragiuli ahead of Horton, Steed and Crickleby. Through the chicane. Over the run-off area there for 1 or 2 of them. That's definitely going to be exceeding track limits, but as long as you don't do it too many times, you'll get away without the penalty. Down into the hairpin, and there goes Horton up the inside, but he's out wide again. It's a bit damp on the inside line there, couldn't stop the car, and in the end, in trying to gain 1 place, he ends up losing 4 because Steed, Crickleby, Hodgkiss and Aiden Hills all go through. So through the Goddard's hairpin they go, out onto the pit straight once more. There go the leading 2. They're about to put a lap on one of the G40 Cup runners. That gap only 3/10 of a second, and again Will Orton sets the fastest lap, a 45.392. The top 3 are covered by 1.7 seconds now. What Will really needs is for Aspin and Smith to start delaying each other a bit. If they start battling and Aspin starts defending again, which he will, then Will Orton might just be able to catch them. The car ahead is, I think, Ignacio Zanon, isn't it, in the 48? Yes, it is, having made a pit stop, had that spin, then went into the pits a lap or 2 later, and now getting well out of the way there as they head through Schwantz Curve. But defensive line is being taken by Will Aspin, This is exactly what Will Orton wants. In the first sector, he was a tenth slower than Sam Smith, but now Smith is getting delayed, and the middle sector time is likely to swing back in the favour of the chasing car. And through Coppice, down onto the back straight again. Josh Steed, by the way, did get past Magnus Kruklevi towards the end of that lap as well, so Steed gaining 2 places now into P6. The live gap look is down to 2/10. There's a car in the gravel at Redgate. Now, see the number from that angle, but Marshall's in attendance to recover it. Another place look gained by Steed now, because he's ahead of Haytham Caragiuli. So Josh Steed into 5th position now, and Kruklevi goes through with him. Harley Horton's the one that's lost out as Aidan Hills is on the inside of Nat Hodgkiss. Again, squeezing Aidan Hills almost completely off the track there. You could see there was contact made as they went down the hill. And Aidan is going to end up losing a place maybe now to Harley Horton, all because Nat Hodgkiss moved over and made some contact with him. A little bit unnecessary, that, to be honest. I know it's the last race of the season, but at some point, someone's going to end up pointing the wrong way because of all of this squeezing. There we go. Aidan Hills gives the hip and shoulder to Horton, who actually keeps on coming and is quicker off the turn, and is now going to be up the inside of Aidan, going towards Redgate Corner. So Horton having dropped to the back of this group for some reason on the previous lap. Oh, of course, we saw him have that moment at the old hairpin, didn't we? And yeah, Aidan Hills wasn't able to retaliate at Redgate because, of course, the live snatch is in progress. Therefore, yellow flags were out. And I'm not sure who was ahead when they went into the yellow flag zone. At the line, it was Hills ahead of Horton, and then at Redgate, it was Horton ahead of Hills. But did he get the overtake done before the yellow flags? Discuss. I'm sure Race Control will be discussing that as we speak. Right, another fastest lap for Will Orton, a 45.349, only a 10th faster, or well, nearly 2 tenths faster than race leader Will Aspin, though. But Sam Smith is getting more and more eager here, isn't he, to get past the race leader. And actually now, I think Orton is close enough to pick up a whiff of a slipstream from these two. That's going to help him in closing even more. Bad news for Smith, though, because as soon as Orton arrives on his tail, he'll have to focus on defending as well as attacking, and that means that Aspin's more likely to be let off the hook. Blatant disregard of track limits that time, going through the chicane from both of them. I suppose the thought from Sam Smith is that if Aspin's going to do it, then so am I. And he goes up the inside, desperately late on the brakes. There is inevitable contact. They both run out wide. And where is Will Orton? Here he comes. He's closing in. He's rubbing his hands with glee because they're starting to get into each other again now up the hill. Aspin on the inside, Sam Smith on the outside. Jinx to the inside. Couldn't quite get there. Car 31, Will Orton, by the way, being warned about track limits. It's not a penalty yet, but he's on his final warning, we believe, for track limits. So he's a part of the lead battle now, but he needs to be careful not to go over those white lines, because that will take him right back out of it again. So 5.5 minutes left to go, and this is a brilliant way to round out the season here in the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge. Will Aspin leading and defending like his life depends on it. Sam Smith in second place, and Will Orton arriving with momentum now, and he'll want to try and use that to his advantage to make a move quickly down into the old hairpin. Back marker Steve Davis getting out of the way there. That means they all have to go in on that slightly tighter, slightly damper line. Smith is quicker off the corner, tries to get alongside Aspin, who again is making that the widest Ginetta G40 in existence, somehow keeping the reigning Mazda MX-5 Super Cup champion at bay. Into McLean's defensive line there. You can see what I mean. Sam Smith now is having to watch his mirrors as much as he's looking out of the windscreen. Again, the race leader is slow, and Sam Smith almost gets turned around the nose there of Will Orton as he now starts to do a bit of squeezing of his own to retain that second place. Brilliant racing, this. They're only 1.7 seconds, by the way, ahead of Will Rochford. If they really start getting into each other, then he could make it a four-way fight for the victory. He's been slower than them consistently, but he is certainly going to be watching this battle with interest. I think Sam Smith there was gesticulating at Will Orton, saying, don't fight me, work with me, because we're going to let the leader get away. I'm not convinced Will is going to listen to you, though, Sam. I think he, having arrived on the tail of these leading two, wants to try and pounce whilst he can. Out of the hairpin they go. The blue and white striped car there, that is Will Rochford in fourth position. So you can see how much closer he was now at the start of the lap. He was 1.7 seconds behind Will Orton. And now I'd say that's maybe under a second. Let's see, the leaders come across the line then. 4 minutes to go. Time then, I reckon, for 3 more laps, which is excellent news. And yeah, 1.1 seconds now, so 6/10 faster than them was Will Rochford in fourth position. Magnus Kruklevi's got the fastest lap, though, as he chases after Josh Steed for fifth, 1:45.278. And yeah, after a disappointing weekend plagued by mechanical issues for Kruklevi, nice to see him finding a turn of speed now towards the end of the day. I just glanced out of the window. I actually thought it was night time. It's got very, very dark here at Donington Park. These cameras do an excellent job of brightening up the picture. It's a lot darker than it looks on screen, I can tell you. But there's no hiding if you're Sam Smith, because he's in a bright orange car, and Will Aspin can see his every move in his wing mirrors. Everything so far that Smith has thrown at him, Aspin's had an answer for. Is Will going to be able to hang on to the end, though? Certainly going to have been helped a little, I think, by the arrival of Will Orton on the scene, just distracting Sam Smith a little bit. Through Coppice, down the back straight. Of those that had dramas earlier on, by the way, Mikey Doble has recovered only to 11th place right now. Conor Brady, who was off the road early, he's only 15th, so a couple of quick drivers languishing down the order after being on the receiving end of some contact on the opening lap. Sam Smith's car, you can see, is not quite in pristine condition either. He's late on the brakes, isn't he, into that hairpin, closes right back in on Aspin. Doesn't go for the lunge this time. That's probably where he got that little witness mark down the left-hand side of the car a couple of laps ago when he did slide into the side of the leader. To the hairpin then. Going to have 2 more laps to go at the end of this one. It's all just calmed down for a second, but I'm fairly certain that Sam Smith is going to have a big, big go at this over the last couple of laps of the race. So Will Rochford then 4th place, now only 9/10 of a second behind him as they go through Redgate Corner. Meanwhile, let's take a look at what's happening in G40s. Yeah, Thomas Holland still only 3rd in that class. So Mark Warren, the race leader in G40s by 15 seconds over Nick White, is now on course for that championship. That was the last of the championships across the 4 classes represented in this race that hadn't yet been decided, and it does look like it's going to go the way, barring any late race drama, to Mark Warren. So that means we can focus entirely on this battle for the lead, which I do sense is just, this is the calm before the storm. I think Sam Smith is going to have probably one last go at this. Whether he chooses to do it on this lap or not, I'm not sure, though. He might feel that being in the race lead isn't the place to be, because then you're the one punching a hole in the air for those behind to get the slipstream from. 5-second penalties for Harley Horton and Owen Hizzy. Horton in 8th, Hizzy in 12th. That, I'm guessing, will be for track limits. And I'm guessing it will be down to the chicane, because we've seen a lot of drivers cutting across the right-hand element of the chicane. Let's see if the leaders behave themselves. Look up on some back markers. No, 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 and no. Not really. They all exceed track limits, and the back markers having a moment in front of them. Now, this could get spicy. Sam Smith's had a good exit from the chicane as well. They're all going to the inside line there as they try and get past some of these G40 Cup runners. The number 5 car there is Rupert Laslett, who was battling, in fact, just got past Brendan Hafner for 2nd place in the G40 AM category. And screecher tyres in the background as well, and that's because Harley Horton's off. He ran wide there a few laps ago, and now he's pointing the wrong way entirely. So Harley Horton is going to drop out of the top 10. Across the line we go then, onto the final lap of the season. Now there is more traffic up the road. That is Thomas Holland, who's dropped behind the G40 AM class leader now, which is the number 37 car of Andrew Willis. So Holland still 3rd within his class, but 4th place overall in G40 Cup, getting out of the way of the race leaders overall. Rochford not really making any progress against the top 3 on that lap, so it is going to be a 3-way shootout here, maybe just a 2-way shootout, although actually Will Aspin over the first part of this lap has just started to get away a bit from Sam Smith again, hasn't he? In the first sector he was fractionally slower, but the second sector I think may well be a little bit different here. A good run through the old hairpin, and Smith now is going to spend the rest of the final lap closing back in on Aspin if he can, leaving himself not much opportunity to get past, although the best overtaking opportunities on this circuit all come in the final sector, and he is closing. Look through this middle part of the lap. They'll get a nice tow down the exhibition straight, and Sam Smith looking to try and get the race victory. He was 2nd in yesterday's first race of the weekend. He was 4th earlier on today in the wet. It's only his first time racing the car, and he is now staring down the barrel maybe of a race victory. Needs a good exit from the chicane, gets one, but then Aspin wasn't slow either. Down the hill, is Smith going to be close enough to go up the inside? Aspin covers the inside anyway. That's the number 57 of Nick White, 2nd place in G40 Pro ahead of them, about to go a lap down. They're just about going to catch him on the run to the final corner. That's not ideal. He pulls to the right, tries his best to get out of the way, but that sort of forces the hand now. Sam Smith, he's going to be stuck on the inside of the back marker, and he's not going to be able to launch an attack into the last corner. So Will Aspin, after driving the defensive race of his life, is going to come out of the final turn to win the final round of the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge. Will Aspin victorious here at Donington Park, and that will do him the world of good. Third in the championship this year. Very, very happy to be able to get a win at the end of the season. Smith second, with Will Orton third, Rochford fourth. Now behind, have we had more shuffling of the order? Well, we've got these penalties to be taken into account, and of course Harley Horton, one of the drivers that had a 5-second penalty, also having a spin towards the end. Aidan Hills, meanwhile, bails for the pit lane on the final lap. Here comes Chris White, though. Chris White is going to come home second place in the championship in GT5 AM, but he is going to come home a race winner here in the final race of the season. Across the line he goes, finishes in 15th place overall. It was Harry Mangin, of course, that he was fighting with. Now, Harry actually only finished 15th place in that race. Sorry, 5th place in class in that race. So, I don't know, maybe Chris White might actually have been able to... Well, he's definitely closed the margin in the points. Let's see. Harry Mangin had a 25-point lead. If he finishes the race, he's champion. Yes, I'm getting that confirmed now by Simon Pace from Ginetta, so that's okay. 5th place for Mangin will still give him the title. Then we move into G40 Cup, and Mark Warren is going to be the only G40 Cup car on the overall lead lap. You can hardly see him in the gloom down at the Melbourne hairpin there, but he is going to come up into the last turn now, and will come across the start-finish line momentarily to take the race victory then. And Mark Warren is going to be the champion in the class as well, isn't he, Mark Warren? Yes, beating Thomas Holland to the G40 Pro Championship and coming across the start-finish line then to take another class victory as well. Well, that was a very entertaining end to the day, and indeed the season. It's been great having the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge on the British GT package. They've split their time between British GT and British Touring cars this year. And we've seen some really, really excellent racing, including in that one, a couple of moments that it could have all gone wrong, but they just about managed to get through it in one piece, and it is the win for Will Aspin, who has won, of course, earlier on in the year, hasn't he? He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 race victories, including his one yesterday here at Donington. So 5 race wins, now a 6th. Third place, as I said, in the points. John Bennett was second in the championship, but ended that race in the barriers on lap number 1. So Will Aspin then takes the final victory of the season. Sam Smith second, third for Will Orton, fourth Will Rochford, and 5th place for Josh Steed. Magnus Kriklevi was 6th ahead of Matt Hodgkiss, Haytham Caragiuli, Mikey Doble, and Will Vincent to round out the top 10. Then it was Rory McKean, Conor Grady, Owen Hizzy, and Harley Horton, those two both having penalties, and Horton with a spin towards the end. Chris White was the GT5 AM winner, from Karim Sekat second and Phil McGarty in third. In the G40 Cup, the Pro class victory goes the way of Mark Warren, from Nick White second and Tom Holland third. And the G40 AM class is won by Andrew Willis, ahead of Rupert Laslett in the end. So Willis really did come forward there towards the end. And Brendan Hafner coming home in third position. So, excellent racing all around. A couple of them that didn't get, well, beyond the first couple of corners, really. Peter Dillnott off at turn 1. John Bennett made it as far as the top of the Craner curves before he was on the grass and in the barriers. And those two, unfortunately, find themselves on the retirements list. In Parc Fermé, though, Will Aspin is the race winner. There he is, and there to celebrate with family and friends. Had to work for that, and there will be a couple that maybe crossed him in that race, or he crossed them, perhaps we could say, but it was entertaining to watch, no doubt about it. And Will Aspin with that 6th victory of the season, and the Elite Motorsport car. And what he'll be up to next year. GT5 Challenge is a really competitive championship, though, so I wonder if he'll come back to try and improve upon his 3rd place in the championship this year. Right then, at the start of the race, which feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? It was immediately a question of people trying to defend a little bit too robustly, maybe. Aidan Hills there coming across on Will Orton. As they went through the first corner, though, there would be drama further back in the order. John Bennett was off, going up through the top of the Craner curves, slid across the grass and nosed into the tyre barriers. He then was out of the race on the spot. Shame for the man that's 2nd in the championship. Off also at Redgate Corner in the G40 Cup went Peter Dillnott, his race ending before it ever really got going. Then Aidan Hills with a big moment coming out of the old hairpin, dropped into the back of the top 10. and he really struggled to get back from there. Sam Smith launching up the inside of Will Aspin for the race lead. They made contact, not for the first time in that race, going into and then out of the Melbourne hairpin. In the end, it was still Aspin that held on, but Will Orton then closed in and made it a three-way fight. For a few laps, it looked like Aspin was in real trouble, but he managed to fend off Sam Smith. And as they came out across the start-finish line, the race victory went to Will Aspin, with Sam Smith back on the podium for the second time this weekend, and Will Orton in third. The G40 Cup part of the race was won by Mark Warren to end a successful campaign.